I think that with the way the game is transition and with these offensive young coordinators that we keep talking about, and the McVays of the world, the Kyle Shanahans of the world, the Matt LaFleur's of the world that choked in the playoffs last year, and I don't want to hear it's Aaron Rodgers' fault. That was the play calling of Matt LaFleur in the fourth quarter that cost them going to the Super Bowl. So I think these coaches that everybody keeps saying that they're quote-unquote geniuses, they play against these defensive guys like Bill Belichick. We've talked about it over and over again. And even Andy Reid. Andy Reid, look how long it took him to win a Super Bowl until he figured it out. He couldn't beat Bill Belichick if he threw him a curveball, okay? So these young offensive coordinators, as good as offense and as offense has completely changed the game of the NFL into a speed game with the quarterbacks and 50-point games and stuff like that, and it's helping fantasy sports, which the NFL and Roger Goodell loves because it's putting money in their pocket and making these players superstars. My last question for you. When you look at these quarterbacks now, you heard Deshaun Watson, who could be looking for a new team next year if he can get out of the trouble that he's in. Russell Wilson, there are stories coming out that he doesn't want to be in Seattle anymore. Pete Carroll's getting old. They're not getting along over there. And obviously, Aaron Rodgers, who this could be the last year for him and the Green Bay Packers to make the run because Devontae Adams might be going to Oakland or Las Vegas or wherever. I mean, are you surprised that these big-name quarterbacks could be looking for a new team and a new place to play next year?
Like I said, I'm not surprised by anything anymore, and we see this. We've seen this even before the era of free agency, where big-name players, quarterbacks especially, wind up in different places as a team moves on and so on. We saw Joe Montana wound up with the Kansas City Chiefs. Johnny Unitas wound up with the San Diego Chargers. Joe Namath wound up with the Los Angeles Rams. And it's not just the quarterback position. You think about some of the other great players in the league whoever thought that Jerry Rice would get phased out in San Francisco, okay, in favor of Terrell Owens. And then, of course, he goes on with the Raiders. Actually appeared in the Super Bowl with the Raiders.
Yep.
So, by the way, I can confirm that Pete Carroll is getting old because if you're alive, everyone is getting old. Just keep that in mind, okay? The alternative of getting old is not getting old, and we won't go into that.
Well, he's as old as dirt.
I understand you, older. That's you see, it's funny, that's how I refer to myself, old-er. I'm old-er. It's funny, you think about this now. Russell Wilson, who's never missed a game, by the way, it's his 10th year in the league already.
Yep.
You really think about it, that's his 10th year in the league. And hopefully he'll get some good pass break. He's playing his favorite team tomorrow night, the Rams, who have spent a little funny stat, 19 games including the playoffs. Russell Wilson's been sacked 77 times by the Rams.
That's a lot.
That's four a game. Russell Wilson, by the way, sacked 33 times as a rookie. Every year since then, not including this year because the year's not over, sacked at least 40 times in 8 straight years. So he's taken a little bit of a beating as well. Some of that's self-induced. When you run around like they do, like Ben Roethlisberger and his scrambling, he was more footwork than anything else. Russell Wilson, can run. He can also scramble and so on. But listen, you're fair game, unfortunately, and those hits take their tolls. But no, I'm not surprised because we are in an era now of free agency, for the last 30 years. Remember, for 70 years, the NFL didn't have free agency. So now I think you see even teams more willing to move on. And as we see the involvement of the younger quarterbacks, especially the mobile quarterbacks, everybody wants that shiny new toy. So, and if you can still, and you keep in mind that when you have quarterbacks like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers who can play for a long period of time, you can actually move on from them and maybe get something for them because they still have a lot. Tom Brady's the exception to the rule, I mean, the Hall of Fame might be closed by the time he gets inducted. Okay.
He will be the Hall of Fame by the time he gets there.
No, this whole separate.
Have you guys ever been to Canton, by the way?
I have.
Yes, I have.
Isn't it great?
It's beautiful.
I've been going for about 30 years. It's a great experience.
It was so good. When I was there with my family like 8 years ago, we didn't even get to see all of it because it had to close at that point. It was so good. All the stuff we saw was remarkable.
It's huge and it's beautiful.
No. And now, and 8 years later, they've got a lot more stuff built up, and they've redone the stadium and all that. So I was there this year and so on. Nobody was there last year because of COVID, but this past year it was a great time and so on. So we'll see. I guess I'm not surprised. And be it player empowerment or just we're getting to we've seen over the last couple of years some veteran quarterbacks. Eli retired and Phillip Rivers retired and Drew Brees retired. We're in a little bit of a semi-transition year. We don't know when Brady's going to retire. I'm still waiting for Aaron Rodgers to throw 100 interceptions. By the way,
that's never going to happen.
That's one of my favorite. Think about he has thrown 420 touchdown passes and 91 picks.
It's unbelievable. He is. I think people forget how great he is, and if you look at his numbers and you compare him to the greats, to Tom Brady's, and I've said this over and over again because I am not. It's not that I'm an Aaron Rodgers lover. If you look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers and you compare him to the greats, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, they're not even close. That's how good Aaron Rodgers is. It's not even close. He just can't stay healthy. But his ability and what he does and how great is as a player and on the way he does it, it's phenomenal. He takes it to a whole nother level.
There are two guys who threw the football. Warren Moon threw the tightest spiral I ever saw. Marino came in with a flick of a wrist and his release. But Aaron throws a football different than any person I've ever seen. And the combination of being able to do that with his accuracy is almost mind-boggling. And for people who think he has bad playoff games, he actually has pretty good stats in the playoffs.
Right.
Unfortunately, the guys who try to stop the other team, Aaron Rodgers has lost some high-scoring playoff games. In fact, I can't say it's not his fault. He was on the wrong end of the highest-scoring playoff game in NFL
51-45 with the Cardinals.
51-45. And unfortunately, it was his fumble that he kicked up in the air that Carlos Dansby grabbed and ran into the end zone. That turned out to be the game. But he had a phenomenal game up until then. So that was actually his first playoff game.
So one more question for me while we're on the topic of Hall of Fame. We've seen these players now, a lot of top players retire earlier than expected, 7-8 years in the league, where normally you would see them play 10 at least or even more than that. Guys like Calvin Johnson got inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Patrick Willis just retired recently, Luke Kuechly, Marshawn Lynch, guys that were top at their position and didn't play as long as they could have. And we said the Hall of Fame do that with Calvin Johnson now, let them in. Do you think it'll be more flexible with the years they come into the Hall of Fame as a result? Do you think they'll change the criteria because of that? And also, could you see that kind of thing be more of a popular trend like Calvin Johnson did?
Yeah, I could see it being more of a popular trend, and I think the voters are going to have to keep an eye on that as well. If anything, to me, needs to change when it comes to the Hall of Fame, it's the older players, the veteran players, the ones that have, once a year. I mean, this year it's Cliff Branch. Thank goodness. He's a guy I've written about for an awfully long time. But why aren't there more senior nominees in 1 year? Why is it one per year? The NFL, I'm not the NFL. The NFL does not run the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I got to make that clear because when someone doesn't get in, well, the NFL doesn't like this. The NFL doesn't run the Pro. They're their own separate organization, okay? They support the Hall of Fame, but they don't run the Hall of Fame. It's not their vote. In fact, the Hall of Fame has Hall of Famers on their voting committee now. They have Tony Dungy, and they have Dan Fouts and James Lofton and all that. But in any case, to answer your question, yeah, I think they've done some adjusting over the years and so on. And I know a lot of the voters, going out there and either working on them when I was at ESPN or so on. And they do make it, but I think the adjustment has to come with the Veterans Committee stuff, the Senior Committee stuff. And again, we now have a contributor and a coach and player nominated every year along with the modern day guys. But you bring up a great point, these guys who have outstanding careers, because what's the first thing you hear when someone doesn't play a long time? Well, Terrell Davis didn't play a long time. Dwight Stevenson didn't play a long time. Gail Sayers is the number one. Someone's had their career. To me, the Hall of Fame is sustained excellence over a long period of time. But there are exceptions. When you look at Gale Sayers, I defy you to say, wow. Okay. Now, I know people like to bring up Bo Jackson, but that was a really short tenure of work. No, it's great. I could listen. We could do 5 hours on the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, but no, you bring up a great point. And when you said that, Patrick Willis is the first name that came to mind of the guys lately. I mean, Calvin. Calvin. I think people were a little surprised.
Julian Edelman too.
I know he has all the postseason catches, but it'll be interesting to see how they judge him in terms of the regular season performances as well, because that plays a part of it. So, and I guess I'm not sure if Brady's going to get in. By the way, if you doubt that Rob Gronkowski's not going to get in, then I don't know what you've been watching. I mean, he's one of the most dominant players ever. He runs, he blocks. He's climbing. I don't know if people realize he's climbing up the all-time touchdown pass list in terms of touchdown receptions.
I think he's got 92.
Antonio Gates holds the record. Tony Gonzalez is in the Hall of Fame. But Gronk makes the most of his opportunities. I'll say that.
Yeah, especially with his mouth.
And his party boat.
Anyways, Russ, tell the fans how they can find you on social media.
Bax Football Guru on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. Me and my partner Julie Voigt do. We haven't done a podcast in a while, but we're hopefully gearing up. But we've been writing some columns. We're on full press coverage on ProFootballGuru.com. I'm on Fansided and NFL Spin Zone. Doing some stuff with Stat Factor now as well. Jets X Factor. I do some historic stuff for them. But I tell people, if you want to get what I do, just follow Bax Football Guru, because whether you like it or not, I'm going to tweet it to you.
Well,
you get to go into Jets football history?
Oh, please don't. I mean, I'm a Jet fan, so
it's
not much history there.
About the Jets Houston Oilers playoff game in 1991.
I remember that.
Al Toon didn't score a touchdown all year. He finally got one in the playoffs.
Yeah, we remember all the great times for the Jets, even 98. Lovely.
Well, somewhere down the road, I'll bring up somewhere down the road, they don't play them until week 17. I know I'm going to be writing about the Keyshawn Johnson Jets-Buccaneers game. When Keyshawn met the Jets for the first time after he was dealt. Do you remember that game?
Yeah, I remember.
Oh, yeah.
I remember. Mr. Flashlight, like taking shots at Wayne Corbett. By the way, Wayne Corbett, he looks horrible. I saw him at last week. They had pictures of him and Curtis Martin. Curtis Martin looks like he did when he was 21 years old. It's unbelievable. He looks so young, looks so good and healthy. I've done a bunch of concussion things with him, but Wayne Corbett looks horrible. I mean, he looks like he's like 70 years old. He looks terrible. It's unbelievable.
When I think of Curtis Martin, I think of Coach Parcells.
Yeah.
And their relationship and so on. I worked with Bill for a number of years at ESPN. I think he's fantastic. And, the respect that he had for Curtis and so on. Curtis was, I know, a person that Bill even admired. And I remember Curtis's Hall of Fame speech, which was riveting because, he talked about how important life was and his mother and the stuff that he went through when he was a kid and overcame a lot to get where he got and so on. His perspective on life is amazing.
He didn't want to play football. He can't. I've heard it so many times. He never wanted to play football. His mother forced him to play football so he can stay away from the drug dealing. I mean, he walked into his grandma being stabbed to death. I mean, the crazy stories that he told and the trials and tribulations he had to go through as not only as a football player but as a human being, and where he has gotten and how he's one of the top 5, top 6 running backs of all time. People forget how special Curtis Martin was.
Well, didn't you find it ironic that he slipped to the third round because of the injuries, and then yet when he got in the pros, he basically didn't miss a game?
Unbelievable.
Funny how those things happen, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. And the stories, I remember the Oakland Raiders story that he told me. He loves bringing it up that he when he was walking through and he had a concussion in the third quarter and he was getting into the huddle and Testaverde said that you're bleeding through your nose and he didn't even know where he was and he still played. It's an unbelievable story. Curtis Martin is one of the nicest, friendliest people you'll ever meet, and the stories that he tells is just fantastic. He's a special guy.